Hi, my name is Bhavna Sharma. I'm a student at SP Jain School of Global Management and I'm in the second year of Bachelor of Data Science. I have recently published a paper on debit card transactions with IIT Bombay, which is why we are going to introduce this video. And to briefly explain what I'm currently doing, I am in my fourth semester. We last week published another paper on time series forecasting of sea ice extent with my SP Jain peers, and I'm preparing for my finals. So our paper is called Merchant Transactions Through Debit Cards. To give a brief overview of what we're trying to do is we are trying to assess the impacts of merchant discount rates on overall debit card transactions. What are merchant discount rates? So every time we make a transaction at a merchant shop, whether it be at the point of sale or online through e-commerce or through any other method, they have to pay a certain amount of interest to the bank on any debit card or credit card transaction we are doing. And we have focused mainly on just the debit card transactions and tried to assess, like, given the government policies that have changed over the years and the impacts of COVID, how has the MDR percentage that the merchant pays affected the overall usage of debit cards. So our question actually we ask is that, given that the MDR policies government has changed, are banks moving away from RuPay debit cards? Are they focusing more on MasterCard and Visa debit cards? So we're just trying to assess, like, how has the market for overall debit cards changed over the years that we have assessed. And when talking about how it got selected by IIT Bombay, while we were writing the paper, I was working under and being mentored by Professor Ashish Das, who is my co-author for the paper, and he's from the Department of Mathematics at IIT Bombay. So I should thank SP Jain for that, because a few CVs were shared from SP Jain to Professor Ashish, and he had interviews with all of us and selected a few people who would work under him as research interns, and I was fortunate enough to publish a paper out of the research that we had. Before I joined Professor Ashish for his research, he was already doing a report on this topic, and while he was assessing a few years beforehand, with me joining him, we could expand our scope and we increased the number of years we were observing through. And what our questions throughout the paper were like, in 2018 and 19, governments had a policy where, to relieve the pressure from the merchants, they made that the merchant discount rates that the merchants paid was zero, but in turn, they started paying the banks for the merchants at a fixed rate. But when 2020 came, they stopped paying the banks and they asked the merchants to again restart paying the banks with just a small alteration, that the national RuPay debit cards, they would have zero MDR policy continued, but the bank would not receive any money from the government on the usage of RuPay. So the government made sure that RuPay was something the merchants had to pay nothing on, but the banks earned less because of it. They earned more if people started using MasterCard and Visa, but they earned less if people used RuPay. So their preferences changed, and they started more recommendations of MasterCard and Visa, which is why we noticed that through the PMJDY scheme, the number of beneficiaries kept on increasing, but the number of debit cards that were issued, they staggered in between. And through our research project, we noticed that overall COVID happening and all the no contact trend that came in, how did that impact this observation that we had before of the banks moving away from RuPay and the debit card transactions overall. So again, what came into picture was Bhim UPI, because since COVID we have noticed, and before that even, since Bhim UPI was introduced, it has been cannibalizing the whole arena and people prefer it more, and the transactions and the amount of transactions has been skyrocketing for Bhim UPI. So in our project, we make observations, we talk about the possible future outcomes, and we also talk about, if the government wants to further promote RuPay, what are the steps that they should take. So as I mentioned, this was a joint collaboration between me and Professor Ashish Das from IIT Bombay, and we co-authored the paper together. But throughout the process, we I personally had the support of a lot of people, including Mohini ma'am, who helped me prepare for the interview and my CV, our director, Professor Abhijit Das, who supported me and encouraged me throughout the process, and my friends and my family who encouraged me to work harder.